I ain't the kind to wear a tie. Button up from 9 to 5. I tried that life but said goodbye. I'm not always polite, but I get the job done. Who says that work can never be fun? I'm simply unprofessional. Simply unprofessional. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Simply Unprofessional. I'm your host, Webby. Join me tonight. We got Devin.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Devin.
And we got Rob.
Hey.
Rob,
Hmm?
do you want to share with the listeners how your day's going?
I've been traumatized. I want to go back to sleep.
Do you want to just pretend this day has not happened?
Yes.
All right. Do you want to elaborate for the listeners?
Give the dog a bath. Not go well.
Just a little water, Rob.
Pretty self-explanatory, I guess, on that one.
Just a little water, Rob.
Yeah, but now she's outside getting dirty again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
No,
that.
No, I got all scratched up and stuff too because I was trying to cut the knots out of her fur, and she was freaking out on me, and I hurt my knees because I fell on the floor, and my back hurts from bending over because then I wasn't kneeling because my knees hurt, and it's just a big no.
This sounds like a lesson in why people pay dog groomers.
Yeah, the problem is I have to get her rabies updated before I can take her to the dog groomer.
Which is happening this week.
Yeah, which is happening tomorrow, so that's why I wanted to give her a bath. She was at least somewhat nice for the vet. But she's stinky.
She's stanky. Stanky.
So that's
Thank you,
Rob's
dog.
day so far. Devin, how are you doing?
I'm going good. Woke up. Chilled around the house for a few and went and got Chinese.
So I say, yeah, you went out into town. I missed your call twice, apparently.
Yep. I went and got Chinese. Then after my Chinese endeavors, that was kind of it. Pretty chill day.
General Gao sounds good right now. Ever since Donnie
That's
did
my head.
the weird Chinese rap, the CKY Chinese rap there, just makes me think of General Gao every single time. Anyway, so this week, Devin, you came to me. You're like, hey, let's kick something off here. Let's get current. So you wanted to watch a movie that just recently came out on Netflix, and you pitched it to me, and you're like,
everybody hated it.
ho.
Everybody hated it. I'm never
didn't
picking
hate
movies
it.
again because
I didn't
everybody
hate
hated
it.
it. Everybody
No.
hates it. It's fine. No, it's fine.
It was no Life After Beth.
In terms of it wasn't as shitty as Life After Beth.
We don't talk about life after death.
Oh wait, did you make Rob watch Life After Beth?
No, I just know from your comments how terrible it is.
No, it's not
Oh, okay.
terrible.
It's awful.
Other
Webby.
than
Stop
the
it.
soundtrack, I did not hate the movie. Anyway, you pitched it to me. You were all gung ho, and you're like, "Oh yeah, it's called Fear Street." And I was like, "This sounds like a horror movie, Devin." And you're like, "I mean, it's kind of a mix between a horror and like a suspense movie, I guess." My very first comment to you, but Devin, it's not October yet. That is the month that I subject myself to horror stuff.
And I looked at you and I said, well, I mean, look, I don't know much about this movie either, but by the description, it looks more like in line of like a horror movie meets like maybe like a supernatural style show or whatever, based on the synopsis. I'm like, I don't really know. I'm going in blind.
Yeah. So we all sat down and we watched it together yesterday. Essentially, the premise of the movie, spoilers for people who haven't seen it yet, obviously. If you haven't watched it yet and you want to, then pause the podcast, go watch it, and then start the podcast back up. But don't forget about us. We're here too. Anyway, there's two towns. There's Shady Creek? And
Sunnyvale and Shady Side.
Shady Side. So Shady Side and Sunnyvale. As one could guess, Shady Side is rampant with crime and murders and just violent crimes in general. Sunnyvale has not ever had a violent crime, apparently. Instantly, Rob was like, this sounds like it's like a pact made with like a demon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like you were necessarily far off. I'm still curious as to why there's no crime in Sunnyvale. They have not, after having watched the movie, they haven't really explained that.
Well, there are 2 more movies, so
right now they did explain.
This is a trilogy.
They did kind of
1 movie a week.
They explained why there's so much violent crime in Shady. I keep wanting to say Shadyvale, but Sunnyvale. What is it again? Shady what?
Shady Pines.
Shady Pines.
Retirement home.
And that's because there's like this. Oh, what would they call them? Like a urban legend, I guess, of a witch, a one-handed witch, who was hung and executed, and put a curse on the town, saying that she would control the minds of men and essentially make them go mad and do crazy shit.
The rhyme says good men, but she controls women as well. It was a rhyming for rhyming purposes. It really means good people.
Yeah.
It was ye old-fashioned words for men, meaning which just meant everybody.
Yeah. So essentially, just like the movie starts off with this girl in a bookstore. She's working at a mall, and then she meets up with a friend who works, I guess, at the Spencer's Gifts. And then there's like a janitor, and then all of a sudden there's the girl at the bookstore is getting attacked by this skeleton masked individual. So she runs from him for a while, and then she runs past a few more dead bodies, and then finally the skeleton dude kind of like catches up with her, stabs her in the back, and then stabs her in the chest. And then she pulls off the mask, and it's her friend from Spencer's Gifts. And then that guy gets shot in the head. And you think, well, that was a short movie. Eventually he comes back, even after being shot in the head. You find out that these things that this witch controls, these people, like, I don't know, I guess they just can't be killed. Or they can't be put down. I'm not sure. Because, like, there's at one point they, like, set them on fire. They blow them up. All sorts of crazy shit. So then it follows essentially. Oh, what was the main girl's name? I know there's Simon and Katie, who are the friends. And there's the little brother, who's arguably the best character in the
Dina.
And then there's Dina and Sam.
Yep.
Which are 2 teenage girls.
Who Rob was very disinterested in.
Yeah.
He was so disinterested, he walked away from the movie. He was like, nope, can't
twice. Do it. He did that twice.
Let the dog out.
Yeah, that's walking away from the movie. That's fine. I mean, I walked away from the movie to heat up leftovers, so it's fine.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, listeners? They hated the movie.
No, I didn't hate the movie. It was literally. I got the vibe.
I'm never picking movies again. And this year, when we do pick real horror movies, I'm picking the scariest shit possible.
But you.
I already have a movie.
You said you're never picking movies again. But when it comes time to picking horror,
for October, I'm never picking movies outside of that. October, we always pick movies. So in this year, we're not doing. I can't think of another like cool theme. So this year, it's going to be. I was already kind of thinking about it. It's going to be everybody. We all bring one movie to the table. And it has to be like a bring a movie to the table. It's like a lesser known horror movie. You have to bring that to the table. It has to be a lesser known horror movie. That's my proposal for October. Is you have to bring you can bring a horror movie to the table, but it has to be a lesser known horror movie. But we can cross that bridge in October.
I guess so. Huh? Anyway, it's not that I didn't like this movie. It was I got a lot of vibe. Like this was a mix to me. This was a mix between like you said, Supernatural meets Halloween / Scream.
I would say Supernatural. Well, every one of the killers was like a rip off of like known killers. Like you had the camp guy who's going to be the focus of the next movie, along with the milkman apparently. But is based off Jason. You had the skull face mask guy running around stabbing people with knives. He was obviously based off of Ghostface. You had the who's the fucking one chick based off of? Trying to think who the chick's based off of.
She had a knife.
I mean, she kind of reminds me of a mix between the Sweeney Todd and the chick that helped him bake people in the pies, but that's a separate issue altogether. But that was more so just by character design and choice, not necessarily by fucking plan. But I will look into that while we're sitting here talking about this movie, and I'll get back with you very shortly.
But yeah, so these two towns are side by side. They're rivalries. They go to a football game or something in Sunnyvale, and some Sunnyvale people they're holding almost like a memorial thing, saying that it's a tragedy that this murder happened yet again in Shady Pines or Shady Side. And then the Sunnyvale people made some offhand comments, and then a riot broke out between the students, and we found out that the Shady Side people, not the best fighters compared to the Sunnyvale people, who are not prone to violent crimes, but know how to hold their own, apparently. And then a bunch of them dressed up like the Skullface dude and chased the bus down, throwing glass bottles of whatever at the bus. And then the kids on the bus dumped the big Gatorade container that you would see at football games. They dumped that out on the car, and the car crashed. And Sam, who's the love interest of the main girl, she got hurt and started crawling out of the car, but eventually, I guess, disturbed the grave of this witch, which marked her, is the only way I can put it. And then the whole rest of the movie, all these crazy assholes who work for the witch started coming after Sam. Sam or Sam's blood. They were drawn to Sam's blood. We find out later, Dina, Ghostface, the skull face dude came to Dina's house and was being weird, and they found out it's because she had Sam's blood on her shoe. And then the skull face guy broke into the girl who was babysitting and was staring at the dude's shirt, and we found out it's because when Sam got sick and vomited blood up on the dude, and he just hadn't washed it or whatever. So they were all attracted to Sam's blood. Then they devise a plan. All sorts of crazy shit happens, but essentially they just try to devise a plan to trap these guys, these killers. And then they were going to blow them up with chemicals in the school. They could have chosen anywhere, but they decided to blow up the part of the school.
That's every kid's dream, is to blow up the school.
But they put out this big elaborate trap, with a mop full of blood, of Sam's blood, and a bunch of chemicals in one of the bathrooms. All the killers were drawn to the bathroom. They locked them inside, and then they lit it on fire, and then there was just a small explosion. And they walked in, there was just chunks of killers everywhere. And then they all started manifesting back together again. And so the kids GTFO'd. And then essentially Sam was going to give herself up and just say, hey, I'll just let them kill me, then this will all be over with. But the little brother found an article or whatever, showing that there was a survivor of the camp massacre. And essentially how she survived was that she she drowned or something, and her heart stopped. And then they resuscitated her, and I guess she technically, survived. So they decided to go to the grocery store where Simon worked, and they devised this big, elaborate thing of her taking pills in a very specific order in a very specific time frame, which would kill her. And then once she died, they had all these EpiPens that they were going to bring her back to life with. And then they marked each other person other than Sam with Sam's blood with an X on their chest, which I guess it was to buy them time and to keep the killers busy. But, you should have just choked the bitch out. I feel like you should have just threw a plastic bag over her head, suffocated her until she died, and then resuscitated her.
I agree with that.
Because then we come to Rob's favorite part of the movie. The killers do start breaking in, and I think her name was Katie, who was the cheerleader girl. She torches one of them, and then ends up fighting it. I believe it was the axe. No, I think it was Ghostface. The skeleton guy. Anyway, he puts her through a bread slicing machine, which essentially can cut right through bone, no problem.
Which, funny thing about that. The art department in the movie tried to convince the director that human head wouldn't go through a bread slicer, but she was very adamant that it would. So to prove it wrong, they actually bought a bread slicer and shoved a watermelon through it to show her, and it wasn't possible. But to their surprise, it actually worked perfectly, and everyone in the office cheered.
Okay. So this chick got her head sliced in several different slices. How did Simon get it? I forget how Simon died, but Simon ended up dying too.
X to the head.
It was just a straight axe to the head.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. And then, even then, they decided, the girl, I don't know, in some of the melee, they lost a bunch of pills, so Dina brought Sam over to the lobster tank, pulled the lobster out. I don't understand. That seemed pointless. But they took the lobster out of the tank, and then she started to drown Sam just as her brother was about to get axed. But Sam, stopped breathing. She essentially died. All of the killers disappeared. And then they went to go resuscitate Sam. And me and Devin said this at the exact same point, and Rob was 5 seconds ahead of us as far as the movie goes. But to resuscitate a drowned victim, you wouldn't use an EpiPen, first off. You just start doing CPR. So Dina decides to put 12 EpiPens into this chick. And then when that didn't work, started doing CPR. That essentially resuscitated her, though Rob made a good point. Dumping that many EpiPens into a person probably is going to kill them too.
Yeah, it was 9 or 10.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was just literally one right after the other, after the other, after the other, and it went on for a while. That was a dumb amount of EpiPens to be used to try to resuscitate somebody that you just drowned. But they all thought, okay, earlier they had called the one survivor, but they got the voicemail to try to double check to see how they had survived. But they all figured, okay, well, it was all over, blah, blah, blah. They gave their statements to the cops, who just chalked it up to two druggies murdering a bunch of people at the grocery store.
Which, by the way, makes no sense. Because then how did they die?
Yeah, how did they? Yeah, 100%.
They wound up killing themselves after it was over. Durr.
I always shove my own head into a bread
I said they
slicer.
killed each other. They killed each other, or they just died.
So while he was dying of an axe to the brain, he managed to shove her into a bread slicer.
Yes, Rob. Yes.
Okay.
Weird things have happened.
That's one of the few things I didn't like about this movie.
And
One of the few things. I feel like
One
you
of the-
misspoke.
I-
One of the many things you didn't like about
No,
this movie.
I only disliked two things. One was that they blamed them, the two kids that gave up their lives to save their friends, got blamed for the murders, and there's no way, like,
To be
to
fair,
have blamed them.
they didn't want to do that. It was just that was the story they were going with because
I don't care. They're still shitty friends. Hey, my dead friend saved me. I'm going to blame them for a murder. So now everyone was going to hate their families because they're murderers, and we put the burden all on them. Yay, us.
I mean, to be fair, nobody in that room wanted to do that. But I got you. But I mean, no one sitting there wanted to do it. They were all just like, well,
Dina even
they
said
say,
that's
hey,
not what
a
happened.
stranger murdered them and ran away. Because even the cops would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? How did they kill each other? There's no fucking way that they would believe that. Whatever.
the cops don't believe that though. That's the thing. They just none of the kids are saying what really happened.
And Dina even said, she's like, it doesn't matter what happened. You already have the story. You're going to run with it.
Right.
But it doesn't make, like, a good reporter would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? This doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, I mean, to be fair, in the town that murder crap happens in almost weekly, like, that's the reasoning of why that story happens. It's it's probably at this point the news media just runs with
terrible writing, period.
I mean, Rob, you're not incorrect. It's not great writing. However, at the same time, I really feel like that you're saying like they're shitty friends because they let that happen. They didn't want that to happen.
I get murdered and you guys blame me for the murders. I will think you are shitty friends.
But they didn't want. But you act like
they wanted it. So fucking shitty.
I get it, Rob. But you're acting like they sat down after the meeting. Like, all right, listen, guys.
They did. They all had the same story. They all sat down and said,
"Hold on." You act like they're never going to believe this. So this is what we're going to do. I don't care what they say. Blame it on our friends. Fuck them. Like that's kind of what you make it sound like. But every single one of them.
That's what they did.
No, it's not. The girl sat there.
Not what they did.
The girl sat there and was like, "Look, I don't want to do this. Like, no matter what I tell you, you're not going to believe the truth when I tell you. You're not going to believe that."
They could have made up a person that killed their friends in the grocery store and then left. Instead, they're just like, I don't know, I didn't see anything. I slipped on glass.
I mean, like you say it like that, but on the same hand,
that is the way they all said it. I slipped on glass. I fell on glass. Yeah, they slipped on
glass. But you're like, okay, so you're saying that they could have technically been like, yo, it's whatever. Whatever. This random person came in, killed people, and left. Right? You could say that,
which makes more sense than what we went with.
You're not incorrect, but I feel like it's been painted in a certain way to begin with because like they knew they were air quotes druggies to begin with. So I feel like they already wanted none of these kids were already per se like painted in a good light to the police officer or the public. Like if you run down the list of things that she did that night, she stole somebody's gun. She stole a cop's gun. They stole an ambulance. They did all of this stuff.
She should get blamed for the murders.
They did all of this. Like, she may or may not have almost killed her friend. It's like, I feel like at that point, if they opened up the can of worms of being any other possible solution, besides, I don't know, it would have been way more questions, and it would have been way worse for everybody involved. And everyone kind of collectively sat down and said, this is what we're going to say. However, none of them were happy about that. Like, even, like, her brother at the end.
If they weren't happy. Because she says, like, that the kid, the guy, was supporting his family on his own since he was 15. Now he's dead. And, maybe if his death he had been murdered, they could have gotten, like, life insurance or something. But because they made him the murderer, his family's going to get dick all, and then they're going to get blamed. Like, people are going to, like, say, oh, you're the family of that murderer, blah, blah, blah.
He was supporting his family by himself since he was 15. I really don't think
That's what you're taking things at face value in the movie, and that's what they said.
But no, I'm just saying I really don't think he had life insurance.
Yeah, but sometimes like you can see like never mind, whatever. It's fine. They were shitheads. They deserved it. They could have walked away and been perfectly fine, but they decided to stay and help defend their friends, and then they died, and then their friends blame them for the murders, and everyone thinks they're fucking murderers. But yeah, that's fine. They're good friends, wonderful friends.
I'm not saying they're good friends. I'm just saying like they're not. You're painting.
They felt slightly bad about it. You're right. Oh, I'm sorry. It forgives all of it.
Okay, that's cool. I got you, Rob.
This movie has driven a wedge between SU here. All right. Anyway, Sam, Dina, and the brother are all at the house, thinking that it's over. The phone rings. Dina picks it up. It's the previous survivor calling, saying that it's not over. It's never over. The witch makes the rules. And she turns around and sees Sam. And then it pans down and Sam has a knife in Dina's gut. And then they start fighting in the kitchen. And the brother's downstairs on AOL on the computer. And he's defending Simon and Katie to the person that he chats back and forth with about all this supernatural stuff. And then the sister comes down, Dina, and brings the brother upstairs, and they have Sam tied up with the 19-foot-long telephone cord that all houses had back in the day.
It wasn't. That was a really. I was thinking that when I was watching. That was a really long telephone cord.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, especially in a house that only had one phone back then, they usually would have really long cords, and they'd usually be
right. Yeah, absolutely.
That walk around the house.
Yeah, like I completely understand that. But that was a long ass cord.
And then it essentially cuts, and that's the end of that particular spot. With them saying that they're going to try to, they're going to get Sam back. They're going to figure out how to do this. And then we start getting previews for the next one that comes out.
That part made me laugh too, though, because she brings the little brother up, and all she says, she shows him her wrapped in the phone cord, and all she says is, "Sam's not feeling like herself," and she's like, "Rah!"
Yeah, she's acting like what's that? The girl from The Exorcist there. Unintelligible talking, just kind of grunting and snarling noises. Then we get the preview for the camp one, which comes out, well, by the time this comes out, it comes out today. Because it comes out on the 9th of July.
And that was obviously a prequel. Do you know if the third one is going to be in the future, or they just keep going further back?
No. So how it's going to work is, you have, my understanding how this is going to work by the description of the second one is, the first one ends with them trying to explain what going back to 1978, listening to her story, and she's going to explain that, but then we're going to have simultaneously stuff in 1994 happening during that whole thing, where she's trying to figure stuff out. And then at some point, either their story in 1994 is going to conclude during that, or it's going to be all wrapped around. And then, because then at the end of it all, she's going to figure something out, I'm guessing in 78, that has them in, so the 1994 and 1978 are all wrapped up by hearing the story of 1966. So we're counting down. We're going from 1994 to 1978 to 1966. And that's kind of how that's going.
Yeah. As long as they tie up and actually give resolutions to the first movie in the subsequent movies, I'll be happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was Fear Street, based off of apparently an R.L. Stine book, as you were telling me yesterday.
Yep.
R.L. Stine, creator and writer of, I believe, the Goosebumps books.
Yep, that is correct.
Dude, those books used to scare me. I'm not gonna lie. Some of them. I've read 4 or 5 of them.
I don't remember there being so much death in Goosebump books, but I don't really. It's been a while since I've read them, but
Bump's not really too much, but there definitely was like death in. There definitely was like death in the Fear Street books he wrote later. He wrote those, I believe, the Fear Street books.
Those were not children's books, I take it.
I mean, they were. He wrote Fear Street originally, and actually, he wrote it originally starting in 1989. The series of books in 1988 starting in 1989. In 1985, a series of books inspired by the Fear Street series called Ghost of Fear Street were created for younger readers and were more like Goosebumps books. Yeah, so Fear Street is like teen horror, like I'm assuming like 16, 17, that range, like young, like not young adult horror per se, but like teen horror.
Okay.
And then a series of books inspired by Fear Street came out called Ghost. He wrote Ghost of Fear Street, which was created for younger readers and more like Goosebumps books, and they featured paranormal adversaries, and some had twist endings. He stopped writing Fear Street and the spinoff Fear Street Seniors in 1999, but in 2005 he brought Fear Street back with a three-part Fear Street miniseries. As of 2010, over 80 million of it has been sold. All from Wikipedia. And then yeah, so Fear Street was, I'm guessing it was definitely like not like it was still a teen book, but it was an older kind of book. That makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to see. My understanding is from the reviews that I've so far, because I guess the review copies went out yesterday or the other day for the part 2 of this. The part 2 is, my understanding, is better.
So there were apparently 62 Goosebumps books, and then there were 6 Tales to Give You Goosebumps books, and then there was 42 Give Yourself Goosebumps books.
Oh wow!
And then there was 19 Goosebumps Presents. And then another 26 Goosebumps series in the 2000s. And then there's Goosebumps Horrorland, Goosebumps Most Wanted, movie adaptations. Oh man. I'm trying to remember, like, of the original ones, any of the ones that stood out that I actually read. Be Careful What You Wish For. I read that one.
I read a good chunk of the Goosebumps books back in the day. Not like all of them, but I read a good chunk of them.
I don't think I did. Go Eat Worms.
I love the TV series. I always like Goosebumps, the TV series, more than Are You Afraid of the Dark? Although the new Are You Afraid of the Darks is actually really good.
You mean scary?
No, like they're good. Like they're just genuinely good.
Yeah, good, but in a scary way.
They have some scary moments, but I mean they're genuinely just good. Like they're good. It's good television. I don't mean like just that in like it's because it's scary. I mean, it's just good television.
Legend of the Lost Legend.
Yeah, I haven't seen Curse of the Shadows, but I've seen Carnival of Doom. Carnival of Doom was actually really solid. Yeah. Rob, if you like Are You Afraid of the Dark and Young, you definitely liked that one. That one's really good. I enjoyed that a lot. The Carnival. I haven't seen the Curse of the Shadows, which is the second season. It got renewed for a third season. But actually, it's the first season of the reboot, and then the second got renewed for a second season. But the Carnival of Doom is really solid. Like that was really good. It's like a mini series, like 3-episode miniseries. Mm-hmm. It's really good. It was really good. I was like, wow, that's really good. It's yeah.
All right.
Recommend it.
All right. Well, I mean, we didn't talk about all of the very like in-depth details, like plot for moment for moment of this movie, but that was essentially the plot and the basic rundown of Fear Street. And was it 1994 or 1998?
1994.
1994. Again, by the time you guys listen to this, the second one will be released on Netflix, which is the camp one. So yeah, that's all I got on this one. Do you guys have anything else that you'd like to say regarding this movie?
No, I'm really looking forward to the second one though.
I would like to know more about the witch.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. That's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure maybe in the third one it'll talk about like what happened in the beginning with the witch.
And then maybe a resolution to like what happened in the first movie, like them either saving Sam or sacrificing her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for that one. Now we do have. Now this is I'm going to leave this up to you, Devin, because I don't know how. We were throwing around the idea of finishing off the riddle dungeon. I don't want to rush through it. I also don't know how long that would take, like how much more of the riddle dungeon there is for our intrepid adventurers. But we're around the 40-minute mark. So
I had planned. I will say this: I had planned a good bit more of the riddle dungeon.
All right, well,
so
we can hold the riddle dungeon off then. Okay, because we're right around the 40-minute mark, leaving us, 20-ish more minutes, and I don't want to have to cram and speed through the remainder of the riddle dungeon in just 20 minutes.
Right.
So we will do that as a separate episode.
Yep. And the listeners are getting 2 episodes this week, correct?
What's that? Yeah.
Listeners are getting 2 episodes.
I am going to try to cram in another recording. So, yeah. So with that, everybody, that's the end of this episode regarding Fear Street, 1994. Hands down, the little brother, in my opinion, best character.
I agree.
Also,
I feel like the gender is going to play a bigger role. Too.
Also, the soundtrack, awesome.
Yep, soundtrack is quite good.
I know the soundtrack did annoy Rob at first because it did seem like somebody just went to the 90s greatest hits on YouTube.
Yeah, no, that definitely
15 seconds of each song on that playlist.
Yeah, like if they had played like a couple full songs, it would have been great. But like they played like 15 seconds of like a dozen different songs all in succession. Just like, oh my god, why?
Yeah. But I'm not gonna lie, I got real pumped up when I heard Machine Head come on. I was like, oh man, I haven't heard this song in forever. Makes me want to go listen to Bush now. Anyway, Rob, do we have a science corner for this episode?
We do. A listener asked me what would happen if one of the planets in the solar system was destroyed.
Why are all science corners space related?
They're not. This was just the question that your mom / our listener.
Yeah, she always talks about space. She's spacey. Okay?
Well, if we do a second one this week, I'm talking about your gene splicing question. So,
all right.
But this one is she asked, so I'm going to go over it. So the answer to that is it depends on which planet or moon. If any of the moons of any of the other planets were destroyed, it would have no effect on us. Outer planets like Pluto, if you still consider Pluto's a dwarf planet, but whatever.
Pluto's a planet,
Uranus,
Pluto
Uranus, and
Pluto is a planet. If my anus is a planet, so is Pluto.
But
I want a T-shirt that says that.
So Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, not really any impact at all if one of those were suddenly be destroyed. Mercury, Venus, Mars, it depends on the manner. Like if they just vanished, it wouldn't have any effect on us. If they like exploded, it would depend on if any of the debris from the planets reached the atmosphere. So it depends on because a lot of it, like Mercury, most of it would probably be pulled into the sun. But Venus and Mars are kind of close to us, so if they were to explode, it would depend on how close we were in orbit around to where they exploded to get a bunch of debris. But gravitationally and whatever, it really wouldn't affect us. Only debris from the planets hitting us would be the biggest concern. If Saturn or Jupiter were to be destroyed, Saturn and Jupiter kind of act like bodyguards to Earth, where they're so big and have such high gravity that they suck in lots of dangerous things that get sucked into the two big, because they're giant planets. They're like giant gas giants, like hundreds of times the size of our planet. So they suck in a lot of harmful stuff that doesn't get through the outer atmosphere to come inside, like things from out of the sun's heliosphere that come in, like large comets and asteroids and stuff. All of that gets sucked into those two planets usually because they're further out and they have a lot of gravity. So stuff doesn't reach us. So if they were gone, we might have more issues of things getting close to Earth and maybe hitting Earth, which would be bad. The biggest problem would be the moon, our own moon. If for some reason, if our own moon was destroyed, the oceans would no longer have tides. They would just stop moving. The Earth would actually spin faster, days and nights would be shorter, and it would travel around the sun faster as well, so years would be shorter. So, not to mention, if the moon exploded, a lot of that debris is going to come straight to Earth. So yeah.
So, question.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying some of the outer planets, like past Jupiter and Saturn and them, if something happened to them, it wouldn't impact us at all?
Nope.
But now, if something happened to them, would those impact the planets next to them at all?
I mean, it depends. Same thing. If for some reason Neptune exploded, Jupiter or Uranus might get debris or something. Saturn might get some debris, but they're not going to move or anything.
So we're not affected as far as in synchronicity with other planets' gravitational forces at all?
Not really. Some people think that Jupiter, because of its size, pushes us and Mars a little closer to the sun than normally we would be. So if it were gone, we might wing out a little further, but that would be it. It would still be within the habitable zone. So that would make the year slightly longer, but people aren't even sure about that because sometimes Jupiter's on the complete opposite side of the sun from us. So,
right. All right, I wasn't sure if it was going to be like a Rube Goldberg thing, where if something happened to Pluto, the next planet next to it, it would get affected in this way, which would affect the next planet, which would affect the next one. And just
no, not really. I mean, unless something flung Neptune into Uranus, then both. That's funny. Or the other way around.
Listeners, Rob
balls, basically.
Rob is very concerned about your anus, listeners.
Basically, if you were knocking the planets around like cue balls, the whole planet just flung into one, you could cause some problems. Things might be thrown off kilter.
Rob, would this cause problems? Hold on, I have to do it at least once an episode. Let me just pull it up.
Visual cues, everybody, for an audio podcast.
Yep. So, if you were to do something like this, would this cause problems with the atmosphere and the solar system? Just curious.
Pulling a chain through all the planets and having Superman pull it away?
Yes.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, that's going to fuck up a lot of things.
Yeah. It says one day in deep space for one thing. So anything living on these planets is already dead. They're frozen to death. Because the outer universe has absolute zero.
Again, what if they thrive in a cold...
So, all right.
What if they're ice giants? We don't know.
All right, so hold on. So if one chain on a bunch of planets is unreal, is this okay? Does this work?
Several chains on America. On just America.
What is he doing? Pulling it out of the hands of a giant creature? I mean, either way.
That's Dr. Fate.
That's Dr. Fate in the background there. Doing
How
Dr.
much more
Fate stuff.
impossible must this labor be? Surely
I mean, it depends on how far. Like, if he pulls it outside of the habitable zone, yeah, we're fucked. But being a cold planet and being an absolute zero is very different. So, at absolute zero temperatures, everything stops moving. So, technically, nothing could live because
Yeah, it's not actually cold in absolute zero. They're just molecules don't move in absolute zero.
yeah. So
Molecules
there's like,
stop
you
in
can't your molecules would have to move in order to be alive. Like, yeah, everything would just be dead. Like beyond frozen.
Webby is fascinated with Superman toting planets now.
I don't understand his logic here. So, by moving these worlds from their own dying galaxy to new suns at the other side of the universe, I'm saving countless billions of lives.
No, unless he's target unless maybe that one in the middle is a star, keeping the other ones warm. No,
And what is this chain made out of? This
Superman.
raises more questions.
Yeah. Plus, I don't know why he's going to the other side of the galaxy. Just bring them to the next galaxy. That'd be the closest thing, not the other side of the universe.
That second picture just looks like it's trying to rip the United States and Canada off of the world.
Yeah.
The chains are not going anywhere else. It's just the U.S. and Canada. In fact, I don't even think he's technically touching Canada. I think all those chains are technically U.S. Because the one up north is in Alaska. He's like, yo, I'm just going to remove the United States from the equation.
Webby's like, what the fuck is happening right now?
I don't understand old school Superman. I don't understand Superman.
But what is Dr. Fate doing? He's weaving a cat's cradle over the earth in the background. I don't see it.
Those are his jazz fingers. Okay, he has jazz hands, and he's just trying to show Superman, and Superman's having none of it, and he's trying to save the United States from Dr. Fate's jazz hands.
Trying to save the United States by ripping it off into space?
Yes.
That's not
He's going to bring us to a different galaxy where there's no jazz hands.
We'd be dead even before we got to the moon.
Alright, so... Question. And I'm probably beating a dead horse here. But, my sci-fi brain just... It won't shut up about it. So, absolute zero is when molecules stop moving.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only assuming the molecules that we know of, correct?
Yes.
So, because, okay, for instance, obviously it's not real, but for instance, Iceman can get down to absolute zero. Essentially in the comics.
Now, we're talking about science.
And he's
Webby.
fine. I know. But could it be feasible, because we're also talking about other galaxies and other planets, could it be feasible that there is a world out there that have creatures who are meant to live in that extreme cold?
No.
So their molecules, made up completely different of ones that we're aware of, do not freeze at absolute zero temperature.
No.
Why?
Because the absolute zero, all molecules stop movement. It's not getting cold enough to stop. It's just everything, no energy. You have to have energy to have life, no matter what kind of life it is. You need energy, which means things have to move. Your molecules, your cells, they have to be moving. At absolute zero, everything is completely still. Even if you were alive, you wouldn't be aware of it, and you would just be basically, there's no difference between you and a stone at that point.
But what if they feed off of cold temperatures, and that does give them energy, and that stops them from being...
No, it's not how it works. if you like being cold, sure. Absolute zero is not being cold. Absolute zero is the absence of energy or any kind of movement. So you can't get energy from it. It's just deadness.
It's just deadness. It's just deadness.
It's just deadness.
It's deadness.
The opposite of life.
I love that, Rob. By the way, that was great. It's just deadness. Kind of.
You
like
understand now? I don't know. I don't buy it.
I
Don't buy it. Damn.
I don't
Who's in charge of being the scientific expert on all these things? I'm gonna just write them a letter and say I don't buy it. So I think you're wrong. You should recalculate.
Nice, Webbs.
All right, for the SU listeners out there, it's confirmed. I don't believe in absolute zero. If you guys want to message me and whatnot and tell me how stupid I am, I'll promptly ignore them. No, chances are I'll read them and I'll feel really bad about it, and I'll still feel the way that I feel about, ice giants on Niflheim being able to survive in absolute zero. So, that's just my belief.
Okay.
But, anyway. All right, so with that, we'll wrap up our episode. Devin, we need a life advice with Devin.
All right, listen, all you folks out there, if you feel like you're broken and you're helpless, change that mentality to say, I'm growing and I'm healing. And from that point forward, you'll have, I'm not saying a better life, but a better mentality will eventually, hopefully, lead to a better life.
I mean, I'm broken and hopeless.
No, you're not. You're growing and healing, Webby.
The healing process hurts.
It does.
Then it gets itchy.
Yep.
It does.
My heart itches.
You know what else hurts?
My heart itches because it's also at absolute zero. It's just filled with deadness. All right. Where can people find you on the internet, Rob, if they want to message you about frost giants living in absolute zero?
You can message me on Twitter at Confessor_X or follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/ConfessorX.
And where can people find you on the internet, Devin?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at DMP_Pookie and on Twitch at Mist3. And as always, you can find me on eBay doing eBay things. I'm hawking life advice or some shit. I don't know.
And as always, everybody, you guys can follow me on on Twitter at JacksForestWalker, all one word, and on Twitch at DM Webby, and on eBay at Finding Frost Giants to prove absolute zero wrong. That's all.
What's wrong with that?
Until next time, everybody, fuck Booster Gold. I did it again.
Fuck Booster Gold.
Forgot to do the ending.
I played the intro as the end.
Oh,
again.
well.
That's fine, they get lyrics on the outro.
You reached your quota of fuck-ups.
I know. No, I don't have a quota on that. I just have a fuck-up.